Hey guys, Dr. Dave back here again, and today I want to talk about 6 common nutrition myths for fat loss. Now there's a lot of conflicting information out there, and I really want to make this video just to cut through some of the noise when it comes to your research, your trying to figure out what's the best way to really lose fat and to lose fat long term. Now if you go do a quick Google search of best way to lose weight or best way to lose fat, you're probably going to find a whole conflicting informations of even different experts, different influencers, different people that claim to have the way that works. And what you're going to find though is that some of those things directly contradict each other, and that's what creates a lot of confusion for people as they're trying to figure out what's really needed to lose fat, what's the truth out there, what are the myths. And that's why I'm creating this video here today to dispel some of those myths, cut through the noise, and give you guys not just the common myths out there, but what's actually needed to see long-term sustainable fat loss. So let's dive in. I want to start with myth number 1, is that fat will make you fat. Now this is a myth that is from several decades ago. It's one that's probably not as prevalent today with some of the keto and low carb crazes and carnivore diets. But this is one that was largely based on a study that found that a study that was often misinterpreted or misquoted as saying that fat makes you fat. People with higher fat intakes are more fat. And the hard thing with the word fat in general is that dietary fat in foods is still scary to some people because it has the word fat in it. Why wouldn't it make you fat? But really fat has so many benefits, and fat, as we've seen with keto, with low carb craze, there's been a lot of people that have seen some pretty incredible results eating really high percentages of fat in their diet, sometimes upwards of 70, 80, 90% in the keto communities, but there's definitely people that are eating a higher percentage of fat that are not fat and are actually fairly lean. So the key thing to know with this is that fat on its own will not make you fat. And with anything, comes down to quantities. Fat has several benefits for hormones, especially for overall health. So you want to make sure that fat doesn't get too low. It should be an important part of your diet. But in general, 15 to 30% for most people following a balanced diet is a great starting point. But just know that fat on its own will not make you fat as long as quantities are controlled in a responsible way. Now the second thing, I have to follow up the first myth with our second myth, is that carbs will make you fat. Now this one, maybe the first one doesn't resonate as much with you with the fat conversation, but for a lot of people, there's still a lot of fear around having carbs in their diet. A lot of people that believe, especially in the low carb communities, the keto communities, carnivore, believe that carbs are a primary source that's driving fat storage, and that's because they say it elevates insulin, and that insulin has a role in storing fat. So there's the common belief that, well, if carbs spike insulin and insulin stores fat, then carbs make you fat. A lot of people have seen good results with a lower carb approach, but that doesn't mean that carbs make you fat. There's again, with fat, there's a quantity component that's often overlooked, and it has to be taken in context of a full diet of how many total calories you're getting, what percentage of breakdown those, are you getting enough protein, what's your exercise look like, because carbs serve a very important purpose, especially for those that are trying to push more in their strength workouts, those following a sport, or especially longer duration things. Any workouts longer than say like a 1 to 3 rep range, you can get away with a little lower carb intake. But if you're doing any kind of high intensity workouts, any kind of strength workouts, bodybuilding style things that are slightly higher volume, carbs are going to be very beneficial for making sure you're maximizing performance. And if you can maximize performance in the gym, that's ultimately going to help with fat loss. If you can push it harder in the gym, see more strength gains, build more muscle, that's going to help lose more fat over time. So you want to make sure that you're not completely being fearful of carbs, because they do serve a very important purpose for those that are active and trying to push it in the gym or in sport. So know that carbs do not make you fat on their own. It's all in the context of quantity again. The bigger macronutrient with both these is protein. So whether you're trying to moderate fat, trying to moderate carbs, we always say with the clients I work with, we always start with prioritizing proteins. You want to make sure that you're starting there and then fill in the rest with fats and carbs based on your preference. But as long as total calories are controlled, there's not a significant difference between carbs versus fat as one being better or worse than the other in terms of losing fat. Don't fear those carbs, don't fear the fat, just make sure you're prioritizing protein and getting the appropriate quantities of the other ones. Third myth out there is that frequent small meals are the best or needed to boost your metabolism, to some say to stoke the metabolic fire, and that's actually a myth as well. Different studies have found that whether you have frequent meals throughout the day or less frequent, bigger meals, as long as calories are controlled, there's not a metabolic advantage towards one versus the other. So that's a myth to think that your body's going to go into to a catabolic state. You're going to start burning muscle if you don't eat protein frequently enough, or if you don't eat meals quick enough. It's going to actually slow down your metabolism. That's not true, and this is especially been seen with the intermittent fasting community, with those doing more OMAD or 1 meal a day style of eating. There's people that can see incredible results on those because, again, the key variable is that calories are controlled. So if you prefer smaller meals throughout the day, that's something you can stick with and lose weight if that works for you. For me personally, for a lot of my clients, I prefer eating like a man. I prefer having more than just like bird-sized portions of food. So for me, fewer meals tend to work a lot better. And especially for those that have an easier time putting on fat and building muscle, but a harder time losing fat, I've actually seen a lot of experience with clients, with myself, falling into that category, that fewer but bigger meals are actually better for those that have a harder time losing fat. So the key here again is preference. It's what works for you. I recommend trying both things. I'm a big fan of intermittent fasting for myself, and clients tend to like it, not just for the calorie restriction benefits. It makes it very easy to do that because you're shortening the window up, but also for a lot of people, the psychological component's a big thing. I've done the eating every 2 to 3 hours, and really it's exhausting for me. I'm always thinking about when the next meal is. I'm always planning the next meal. You're having to prepare meals so many times throughout the day, versus if you're eating 2 or 3 meals during the day, then it takes a lot of the psychological strain, and the energy and the thought that's put towards food can be spent on other things like working or living your life. All right, fourth myth out there is that calories are all that matter. This is a common one in the if it fits your macro community, or in a lot of those that say that calories are the only thing that matter. Now, this is a tougher one of the myths, because this is also true. Calories are the only thing that matter above all when it comes to weight loss. You can lose fat on a calorie restricted diet that is consisting of junk food and processed foods and those things. There have been plenty of people that have proven that is a way that you can lose fat. Now, why I put this into a myth category, though, is that calories are not the only thing that matters, especially when it comes to long-term and sustainable fat loss, which if you're watching this, you probably aren't just looking to lose fat over the next 3 months and then gain it back on over the next 3 months after that, but you're probably looking for long-term strategies to lose fat for good. And when I say calories are all that matters as a myth, is that if you're not getting enough fiber, if you're not getting enough micronutrients, if you're not eating veggies, if you're not feeling full and doing those other things we talk about, prioritizing protein, nailing your overall calorie intake, then it's going to be very hard to follow that long term. You can say 2,000 calories is the number for you to help with fat loss. You can do that through eating Twinkies and ice cream and doing that, but to do that simultaneously while hitting your protein goal, maybe you chug some protein shakes down, but you're going to be much hungrier with that. You're going to have much more roller coaster type energy throughout the day. You're not going to feel as full. Your overall health probably isn't going to be as good. So that's why I say it is possible to do it that way. It's not efficient for long term. Long term, you're going to have much better benefit out of eating fibrous vegetables, eating things that help blunt some of the waves of insulin response that you might get after eating, and to actually feel full. There is a way to actually feel satisfied and lose fat at the same time, and that's what I have my clients with all the time, and that's the approach I take is more wholesome, satisfying foods that actually taste good but keep you full for longer. And that's going to be the recipe to sustaining fat loss in the long term, because if you lose a bunch of fat over a few months but then you binge out on a vacation or something and gain it back, that's not the type of long-term approach that you're going to necessarily want to be doing. So the fifth myth that goes along with that last one is that calories don't matter. And this is actually probably a more popular myth right now out of the two of them. There's a lot of people in the paleo communities, the keto communities, bulletproof coffee, those types of things those types of approaches that say, well, calories don't really matter. If you're staying in ketosis and you're not spiking your blood sugar, it's impossible to gain fat. You can actually eat more calories and you can actually eat more food as long as it's insert X approach. And that's actually not true. That's something that calories are an important part of the equation. Now, that equation is much more complex, which I'll talk about in other videos, but the equation is very complex in terms of what actually affects calories out and what affects calories in. And there's a lot more than just seeing what your Apple Watch says of how many calories you burned and seeing what your fitness tracker says of how many calories you take in. And that's the only way to lose weight. That equation is very, very complex, but just because you're not counting calories and you're losing weight or losing fat, like many people do when they try maybe a low carb approach, it doesn't mean that calories don't matter. It just means that you found a way to limit calories in a way below what you're taking in a way that will help you lose fat. So that's great if you can do that. If you find a way that allows you not to track, and you can by limiting carbs, limiting fat, eating more protein. People that do more of a vegan or a non-processed approach might see some weight loss, some fat loss benefits from that, and they don't have to count calories, but that doesn't mean that calories don't matter. So be aware of people that say that calories don't matter and you can drink as much bulletproof coffee as you want, you can eat as much fat as you want, because I take it from experience. I was in a low carb keto approach for a while, and I saw results for a little bit, but I actually found a lot of times where I stalled on my progress because I assumed that I could eat as many veggies as I want, I could eat as much fat as I want, as long as I was limiting carbs, that I would continue to lose weight. And that just wasn't the case until I found that protein was a prioritization, and managing overall calories was a long-term thing, and studies confirm that time after time. So the sixth thing and final thing here, the sixth myth that comes as it relates to nutrition myths for fat loss is that, well, to lose weight, I only have to eat healthy foods, or I only have to eat like a bodybuilder. That's something that if it works for you, great, go ahead and do it. But losing weight doesn't mean not enjoying foods you want, or doesn't mean that you only have to eat chicken and broccoli and bland meals and you can't have anything with salt on it. All that is definitely not true when it comes to losing fat in the long term. So I've actually found better results personally and with my clients as well in a less restrictive approach. And for full disclosure, for a long time I was on the other extreme of thinking that you did have to eat paleo and no added foods or processed foods, limit added sugars, no breads, no dairy, any of those things, that foods were either good or bad. And what I found though is that there's no such thing as good or bad foods for the most part. But everything enjoyed in the proper context can actually be beneficial psychologically for long-term fat loss, and can actually be a very positive thing for people that don't do well with the restrictive approach. Now for me, in a lot of clients, something in the 80-90% range of eating pretty clean, eating clean meaning vegetables, minimizing processed foods, prioritizing protein, fruits, good whole sources of starchy vegetables, tends to be a good approach for a lot of people. But in the other 10 to 20% of the time, and in the context of calories over the course of a week, it can be very beneficial to add in a little bit of that ice cream, that pizza, that bread, that donut, whatever that might be for you, that helps you stay with the diet long term while still staying in a slight calorie deficit. Because at the end of the day, if you're not in a slight calorie deficit, less than what you're actually burning, then you're not going to be able to lose fat. But know that there's no such thing as healthy foods or unhealthy foods. In the context of everything else that we talked about here in this video, will be the secret to making sure that you can achieve sustainable and long-term fat loss. Hope that helps dispel some of the common myths out there. Just remember, key thing with this is not to take everything that an expert says or an influencer says, or even myself say, around this is the way that you have to follow to lose weight. It's far more complex than that, and a lot of the myths out there though actually do more harm than good when it comes to sustainable and long-term fat loss. And remember, your goal is not just to crash diet some weight off or to see the scale move, but to sustainably lose fat over time and achieve that physique, that body, that confidence, that energy that you're after and that you deserve. So guys, if you have questions, make sure to put them in the comments below. I always love hearing from you guys, and make sure to check out the description here in the video to see some other resources I have for you as it relates to our training programs, nutrition resources, and other things that can help you on this journey. Again, Dr. Dave here, and we'll talk to you guys soon.